question is, a talent is a natural ability, a native ability that comes to us by our natural birth. A gift is a supernatural ability given to us through our spiritual birth. Do these ever connect? And I think yes, they do. For example, someone has a beautiful singing voice and they use it in evangelism, or they go down to the old folks' home and they encourage the old folks, or they use it in a hospital room. You don't know how desperate Christians are to hear a little singing in an old folks' home or a hospital room. They just come to life. I've seen it with old people where they don't even know their daughter's name anymore, but as soon as you start singing a hymn, they'll finish it with you. Because the mind of Christ is a different thing than the brain. When we die, our brains molder in the grave, but our minds go with us. The mind of Christ, because we have that, as soon as you move from the natural into the spiritual, the mind of Christ engages. And people are able to respond even when their brain has deteriorated. So it's a powerful thing to use the gift of evangelism or of encouragement or teaching while you're harnessing it with the talent of singing. And the same is true in many other areas. People who have abilities to do things that they link up. And in fact, we should be thinking about this all the time. Now, there may be certain talents that you have growing up in your unsaved days that are pretty hard to incorporate. Definitely in the broad array of things, there are lots of abilities people have, and sometimes we never think, like, could God ever use that? If we would think that way, sometimes we think this was a waste of time. There was a young fellow up, I think, near Brantford, Ontario, and he had spent an inordinate amount of time learning about all the sports stats. He could name any sports figure, and he knew all their stats. And one day he was convicted about this, what he considered at that point a waste of time. And he put it on the altar and said, Lord, if you can use this, I want you to use it. You know what the Lord did? Burdened his heart to write personal letters to sports figures who were in a slum. When they're on the top, they get bags of mail. When they're on the bottom, all they get is raspberries. So he started writing to these people and saying, when I'm down, this is what helps me. And he had the most remarkable correspondence with all of these sports figures. I wouldn't know when somebody was in a slump or not, but he did, and he was able to utilize that for the Lord. I think there are a lot of things we have in our pockets that we don't think could ever be used by God, but if we would put them on the altar, we would see that God can use in remarkable ways what seem to be things that maybe have wasted our time or things that we don't think we could ever use. So that's a great question. All of it belongs to God. Your talent should be on the altar just as much as your gift. And God has very creative ways of putting these things together so that our whole life glorifies God in every way.